So hello and welcome to the second of my Get More Listings coaching sessions. So the idea of these sessions are that once a month I'm going to take you through um, some of the ideas that I have introduced in the book, just to flesh out the book contents and add a little bit of meat on the bones to what I'm talking about, and hopefully give you a better understanding of why, as I say in the book, I think that it's possible, very, very achievable for estate agents to get 10 or more extra additional listings a month by doing less marketing. Now that might sound crazy, counterintuitive, but it is possible. And I've worked with a number of clients uh, who've implemented these strategies, and that is shown to be the case. That if you stop doing marketing that isn't working particularly well, because it's not really designed for estate agents or letting agents, and replace it with marketing that is likely to be more effective, you can get a hell of a lot more for less. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into it and share my screen. So that should all be visible for you. So yes, so this is the second session. The first session was very much an introduction to the main concepts that I'm going to be taking you through. So this is really the first session, which goes into more depth in a specific subject. And you'll be able to catch the first session on YouTube. I'm loading all of these videos onto YouTube so you can watch them at your leisure. And if you are watching that on YouTube and you're enjoying it, then please do like, so that the algorithm gets all excited and shows the video to more people. And if you don't want to miss out when I record additional ones, then why not subscribe? Or even better, sign up so that you can actually take part and come on live. And the link to do that will be below in the description on YouTube. So without further ado, the whole reason why I wrote Get More Listings was because I could see from working with clients from, top of Scotland all the way down to Devon and Cornwall, that there were some very similar challenges that most estate agents faced. And those can really be broken down into to three big issues, three big challenges. The first one was an unreliable pipeline, goes from feast to famine. And that causes a huge amount of problems, which impact on all areas of the business. It's very, very difficult to plan, very difficult to recruit. You are constantly, a busy fool. And it would be far better if there was consistency rather than that roller coaster and feast and famine. So that's the first problem that we need to address. The second problem is what I call the hamster wheel of diminishing returns when it comes to your marketing. So um, I'm lucky enough, and I would say old enough, to remember marketing before the internet was a thing. And the internet has obviously opened up a massive number of possibilities, and it's allowed small businesses such as estate agents and letting agents to gain access to tools and resources that just would be unthinkable sort of in the 1990s or early 2000s. But it has created a hell of a lot of additional work, a bit like how email was meant to make everybody have so much more leisure time. And in fact, the reverse is probably the case, that people are slaves to email and constantly reacting to pings and dings and new emails coming in. Well, the wonderful opportunities that digital marketing and social media have offered us has led to what I call the hamster wheel of diminishing returns, where uh, estate agents and letting agents, like many entrepreneurs and small business owners, just feel that they're on a hamster wheel they can never get off, that they're constantly having to push and promote themselves on social media. Uh, and the results that they're getting don't get better over time, they actually get worse. And the third problem is, and this is a fabulous quote that I bring out often from Seth Godin, they are suffering from price competition. Low fee agents hoovering up the instructions, even though everybody knows their service is terrible. But as this quote from Seth Godin says here, I'm a firm believer that if your potential sellers and landlords are making decisions based on price and price alone, your fee, then you need to own that. That's your fault. That's your problem, because you should really be arming them with, well, they should be able to make decisions based on much better indicators than just price alone. So it's your fault, essentially, because if they're choosing people based only on price, it means you haven't given them anything more interesting to care about. So those are the challenges that estate agents face, and those are the ones that I always have in mind, or had in mind, when I was writing the book. Now, I'm going to come on to this at the end, but the book says you can get 10 more listings in less time. All well and good for me to say that, but how can that apply to your business? If you scan the QR code, you will go to a page where you answer 9, I think it is, quick questions about your business. And within 24 hours, I will get back to you with a one-page report showing how many more listings you could get if you applied these techniques. And this is manual. I will physically get your answers and I will plug the numbers into a spreadsheet and a calculator. It's not one of these automatic scorecard things. So it will be a bespoke report that you will get, and it will just hopefully give you an indication as to the impact that the sort of stuff that I'm talking about here can apply to your business. I'll bring this up at the end, but I just wanted to introduce it here just in case, the doorbell goes or you've got to go and pick the kids up or whatever, whenever you're watching the video. So today, and for anybody who watched the previous video, I said this is what I was going to cover. I'm going to cover what I consider to be one of the most fundamental mistakes that many estate agents are making, and that is trying to appeal to anyone and everyone. As the visual there shows, it's the mistaken belief, because it is a mistake, that if you cast your net wide enough, then you'll attract the sellers and the landlords. And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. Because essentially, when you cast your net wide, and I mean that both geographically and also, I suppose, demographically, in terms of the sort of people you're targeting. When you cast your net wide, what you're essentially doing is you are throwing your spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Now, I know from working with hundreds of estate agents, and also I do work with business owners in other industries and have done for many, many years. This isn't an estate agent problem. This is a small business owner problem, essentially. Most estate agents and letting agents and most small business owners get terrified by the idea of specializing in any way, or in any way limiting who they are potentially marketing to. Again, they think, cast the net wide enough, then the right people will find me. Well, that's just not the case. So in a nutshell, this is the too long didn't read summary. Stop trying to appeal to everyone and anyone, and doing that and committing to not taking that approach. The reason I'm talking about this today and going into it in such depth is this will have such a fundamental trickle-down effect in everything that you do. And essentially, if you don't take this on board and fully commit to it, then we could talk about all number of things, that I cover in the book. But unless you fully commit to this idea of stopping trying to appeal to everyone and anyone, then we're always going to be fighting with one arm tied behind our back. So just to sort of add a bit of flavor to this, we can see lots of delicious ice creams there, lots of delicious flavors, and you can choose any one of those. But unfortunately, and this is one of the reasons why I think many agents are stuck on that hamster wheel of constantly posting and always struggling to get the reach and the impact, rather than one of these delicious flavors. If you try to appeal to everyone and anyone, in effect, you appeal to no one, because you've got to be so vanilla that you're not putting people off. You're being so bland that you appeal to everyone. Well, I mean that when I put it in these terms, you'll see that that is not the correct approach. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is what I call my simplified marketing method. And that essentially, I don't want this to turn into sort of a marketing textbook exercise, but I use this graphic in the book, and the attract, the resonate, the connect, which goes around the triangle. That's essentially the strategy. And all the stuff in the circle in the middle, those are the tactics. So when you take on board the idea that you're not going to try to appeal to everyone and anyone, then it makes it far easier to attract the specific people who you are seeking out. You will be able to come up with marketing messages which are much more likely to resonate with them, to actually engage with them on a deeper emotional level. They will start to think, this person really understands me, this person really gets me. And obviously that then makes it far easier to connect with them, both physically and emotionally. There is a byproduct of that. Being specific and writing for or speaking to a particular type of audience, it will be polarizing. And just as you attract a tribe of people who like what you're doing, like what you're saying, there will be others who don't get it, who don't resonate with it, um, who might actually disagree with what you're saying, and that is absolutely fine. I can't remember exactly who said it, but it's such an ingrained piece of marketing wisdom that good marketing should attract and repel in equal measure. Now, you say that to most estate agents, letting agents, small business owners, they'll be horrified by the idea of repelling anyone. But essentially, and I'll cover this off on a future session, you don't want to be wasting time with people who are never going to instruct you anyway. And unfortunately, again, I'll go into this in much greater detail in a future session. Unfortunately, a lot of the marketing methods that all the gurus are teaching you, they essentially encourage you attracting people who were never going to instruct you, which I consider to be a waste of your valuable time and a waste of your marketing budget. So we want to stop that. So I don't want to get all theoretical, but that just gives you an idea, a visual representation of essentially the strategy and tactics that I talk about in the book. So we've talked about specializing, and I just thought I'd throw up a dictionary definition here, and we look at both of those. It's a person who concentrates on a particular subject or activity, skilled in a specific and restricted field, someone who possesses detailed knowledge or study of a restricted topic. Now, I've said before, estate agents, letting agents aren't the only ones guilty of this. And I will use an example here. And this is from a firm of solicitors, because I've seen in the past solicitors are very guilty of falling into this trap of not specializing. This is a solicitor local to me. In fact, I've used them. I've got a great relationship with them. Um, I used them to sell my business actually many years ago. But if you have a look at their website, then you will see these are a general sort of a solicitor in a town close to me where they have all aspects: family law, wills, trust, probate, residential conveyancing, employment law, disputes. And each one of those has got individual areas that they can help you with. Now, that's great that they have got such a wide breadth, and they're a company with a number of different partners and a number of different specialists, and that's all great. But the problem comes with marketing their business in that way, because we specialize in, and then you take a big long breath, childcare proceedings, children's law, divorce, financial issues, domestic violence, legal aid, wills, power of attorney, court of protection, residential sales, remortgages, blah 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 blah. You know, when I hear someone say I specialize in, I then expect to hear one thing said, whereas the common way of going about things is to think, well, if I say I have such a wide breadth of skills, then again, I'm going to cast the net widely and I'm going to attract more people in. That is wrong. What you should do, and I'm just going to use this as an example, is if you have a particular skill set, if you have someone within the business who is particularly skilled or experienced in a certain area, then talk about that pretty much exclusively. There's a phrase I use in the book, which I actually heard, and it relates to radio, which is repetition builds reputation. So if you're constantly seen as the person who always talks about, and I don't, I'll just use an example, getting back to property. If you're always seen as the person who talks about downsizing, then that repetition, oh, they're talking about downsizing, they're talking about downsizing. Obviously, all those people who aren't particularly interested in downsizing, not going to be relevant to them. But the opposite of that is anybody who is in the market for downsizing. When they do think, okay, I'm now starting to think about putting my property on the market, who do I go to locally? Rather than doing that random Google search, what are they going to do? Who's the person who I always see or hear talking about downsizing? Well, they're going to come to you. So that is essentially the benefit of doing that. Here's an interesting one. One of the pushbacks that I often get is people who say to me, well, Neil, if I just concentrate, and I'll just use the example, if I just concentrate on people who are downsizing or selling a particular type of property, something like that, then there aren't going to be enough people in my patch to sustain a business. There may be, there may not. I'm not going to get into that, obviously, in this, no matter who's watching. I can't possibly say based on your local area. But what I will say is that what you're seeing there on screen, obviously it's a different business now, but this was Mike Ashley Sports, the very first independent sports shop opened by Mike Ashley, the billionaire owner of Sports Direct. So he's gone from this tiny little individual retail unit to an international, £1 billion company. Love it or hate it, I'm a Newcastle fan, so I'm not going to go into too much depth about whether I'm a fan of Mike Ashley or not. But what I'm trying to say here is that it's entirely possible that there isn't, if you have aspirations of building a business that you can sell and retire and buy a place in the sun and all the rest of it, you might not be able to do that with just one branch in your local town. If you specialize in downsizers, or you specialize in people who own apartments or anything like that, there might not be enough. There may not. But rather than just thinking, right, okay, this is Maidenhead, right, I'm in Maidenhead, so I'm just going to attract anybody who's in Maidenhead. Far better to attract a particular niche, a particular type of person in a geographical area. And then if you run out of people in that geographical area, you can expand your geographical area. Similarly, another example I will use, the global consultancy firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, was a one-man band accountant. I think in a, first floor office above a shop or whatever. And through a series of good business decisions, acquisitions, mergers, blah, 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 they are now a global brand. So don't think that you are constrained. Geography should not be a constraint. If there are enough people in your patch when you specialize, that's great. If there aren't, well, the solution is to continue specializing and continue targeting a niche, but just to expand your geographical scope. That might mean bringing on other associates or people to help. It might mean physically opening an office elsewhere or something like that. But those are all sort of future nice to have problems that you will address once you exhaust all the people in your area. So who do you go for? Well, obviously we're dealing with property. One of the easiest ways to think about specializing is to focus on a particular property type. I'm a firm believer, birds of a feather flock together. So, you might target first time sellers with these sort of new build starter home style properties. You might go the other end of the market and target people who are selling bungalows. We've talked about downsizers before. You might target people with, an empty nester couple rattling around a large 5-bedroomed Victorian terrace, something like that. You might target people who are selling modern apartments. It really doesn't matter. There isn't a right or a wrong answer. I think one of the first things, and I am keen to give you something to go away with and think about how you can apply this in your business. So, the bit of homework, I suppose, that you will do from this is just to think and also to chat internally, if you also have a team, about what sort of a property or what sort of a property owner you want to focus on. Because I mean, the first thing you need to consider is that there is no point going, right, okay, I'm gonna target people selling apartments if you really can't stand people who tend to be selling apartments, or target older people selling bungalows you if you just find that you get along better with younger people. Oh, I've got nothing in common with older people. I really can't talk to older people. They don't really empathize with me. I don't really get them. Well, if that's the case, don't target older people selling bungalows. So, there has got to be that connection. Going back to the graphic, there's got to be that connection. So you've got to love working with the people you're targeting. There's no point doing a whole lot of marketing, getting the leads coming in, if that's essentially going to just make you more miserable, because all it means is you're just getting more and more people who you really don't like working with. So that's one thing you've got to consider. The other thing you've got to consider, and it's the flip side of the coin, I don't talk about unique selling points. I think, I could get into real direct marketing geekery here, but unique selling points were invented by, or first came up with by a guy, an ad agency guy called Rosser Reeves back in the 1950s. Great for the 1950s, not so much now. I, me being me, I talk about, what's your secret special sauce? So again, um, two sides of the same coin. If you are targeting particular type of seller or landlord with a particular type of property, then it makes sense that there's something about your offering that will actually appeal to them. And the skill comes, and we'll go into it in a lot more depth later on, in identifying what you're doing, which might be a little bit different to what your competitors are doing. And the key to success there is identifying something which actually you may be doing a little bit different, be doing it a little bit differently, but there's got to be a benefit for your client at the end of it. So you need to think, okay, what are we doing a little bit differently? Or you could own a particular part of the process. We're particularly good at sales progression, or we're particularly good at, you know, getting your property sold within a very, very short space of time. Whatever it is, identify what your secret special sauce is, and then we can have a think about how we actually put that out into the world in a much later session. But those are the things to think about. So you need to be going and on a piece of paper or have a brainstorm with the team. Think about, okay, if we were to specialize, we don't want to be bringing in lots of people who we hate dealing with. We've got nothing to offer them. So who do you like dealing with? If you could have your estate agent, your wave a magic wand and your estate agency front window, if you had one, is full of this type of property with this type of owner, the world would be a lovely place. What would that be? So think about the properties, think about the sorts of people that are attached to those properties, because then that allows you to concentrate your efforts, both geographically, because obviously you can concentrate on a particular smaller geographical area or pockets of where these properties are, but it also means you can concentrate your messaging so that you're not trying to appeal to anyone and everyone. So thinking about it geographically, in the book, Get More Listings, I talk about starting with a 5 streets area. Now, don't get too hung up on 5 streets, 7 streets, 3 streets, whatever. What I'm talking about is we talked about the sort of birds of a feather flock together. Think about an area or an estate or a series of terraced rows or some streets where the sort of properties that you're targeting will appear. This is actually, I'm talking to you from here. Um, so that means, it's a tight, it's clearly more than 5 streets, but it's a tight area with the same sort of properties, likely to be the same sort of people. And it just means that you can tightly focus your initial efforts on a very, very hyper local base starting point. And it doesn't take a marketing genius to say, boards get boards. So if you do concentrate your efforts on a very small area and you have success in winning instructions and that leads to sales or lets, then obviously when people see the boards in the garden, they see them going from for sale to sold or to let, then that will have a snowball effect. So the first thing you do is, once you've identified who you want to target, have a look at your patch and start to think about where those people will congregate. So that's the sort of the 5 streets starting point. Then the next stage is to expand that. Again, this is my village, to expand that to what I call the 1 mile area. And in that there will be lots of places, lots of estates which perhaps don't quite fit the same profile, but this is a small village, and it will be very different if you're in a larger town, because you can turn one street and it's a very, very, very different proposition. You go from very, very expensive posh houses, turn a corner, and it's the opposite. Um, but again, if you concentrate, if you focus initially on the 5 streets area and then expand it to 1 mile radius, and there are tools available to do that, then it stops you being a busy fool. Because you are even with this area, you're being a lot more focused than potentially your initial temptation would be. You'll see there that within this area we start to introduce some businesses. There's a pharmacy, there's a takeaway, pub serving food, village shop, that sort of thing. So again, thinking about homework and what you do, this might not sound particularly sophisticated, but the first thing that I recommend you do is get out and actually pound the streets. Because in a similar way to, you might think, well, what's the point of this? I'm drive through there all the time. I know the area. I've been, I've lived close to the area for the last 5 years. Just bear with me. It's worth spending an hour out of the office to do this. And the reason for that is down to what's called the reticular activating system, which sounds all very posh, but it's basically what happens when you go and buy an Audi A4, and then when you're driving away from the dealership, all you see are Audi A4s. Basically, it's your brain's filter that is necessary to stop your head from exploding. Because without, we are bombarded by thousands and thousands of stimuli every single hour. And if the brain took in and had to take in and process all of that, your head would explode. So the reticular activating system is just a sciencey way of describing that filtering that's going on. So if the reason that I'm saying you go out and actually spend an hour just walking around is if you're walking around your area knowing that you're trying to attract a certain type of person, then your brain will be absorbing a lot more stimuli than it would if you were just randomly walking the dog. And I actually suggest, and again, you might question why I do this, but I would actually suggest you do this twice. You do it once during the day, and you do it again at night. Because at night, all these wonderful logoed up vans will appear on drives. And what we will be doing later is thinking about how we can build relationships with people in this area, mutually beneficial relationships. So if you go back on a nighttime, not only will you see, oh, this was a lovely area during the day, but my God, I wouldn't set foot there at night because it's scary. That's unlikely to be the case. But more often than not, you will see, your carpet cleaners, your electricians, your plumbers' vans, your beauticians, your dog walkers. Take a picture, go back, stick it on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet, because these are potentially people who you can build a relationship with and can actually you can develop a mutually beneficial connection with them further on down the line. So really, these are the stages that you need to go through. But I think the most important one is just mentally committing to not trying to appeal to everyone and anyone. It will be scary, and you will probably, the temptation will be to try and put stuff out which does cast a wider net. But trust me, the benefits are there if you actually commit to it. So just sort of to try and bring things to a close, if you've done the exercise and you had a wander around some developments, seeing what's going on, then it will be far easier for you to then just go back and think about, okay, so what are the challenges that these people are facing that I can help them with? Clearly, the challenges that an apartment owner trying to sell an apartment or find a tenant for their apartment will be very different from someone who's a first-time seller. First-time sellers, by their very nature, the clues in the name, haven't been through the selling process before. They may be a lot more green. They may not know the process. They might need a lot more hand holding. Flip that to the potential apartment owner who might be an investor who's got plenty of these. And if you start, teaching them how to suck eggs in a way that a first time seller would appreciate, your 30-year battle hardened investor will think you're an idiot. So think about the challenges that these people are facing. First time sellers, never been through the process, will have very different challenges, very different concerns. We'll be asking very different questions from someone in their late 60s or 70s or 80s who might be selling a bungalow, or perhaps it might be the offspring of someone who you're dealing with selling a bungalow. So having identified who it is you're going to be targeting, where they are, having had a wander around, the next stage really is to start to think about the challenges that these particular people will be facing and the questions that they're asking, because then we will plug that in and we will use that to inform your marketing materials, creating your marketing assets, creating your messages that you get out to the world. And in doing so, they're far more likely to attract the people who you want and resonate. And as a result of that, they're far more likely to connect. So that was just a very, very quick whistle stop tour through the thought process behind why you really need to stop trying to attract anyone and everyone. If you do that and commit to it, it will have a fundamental impact on the way that you go about marketing your business. It will have a fundamental impact on your business, because actually this isn't just a surface level fur coat and no knickers exercise. If you do this properly, then you should have your ideal seller or your ideal landlord at the heart of everything you do, so that actually the systems and the processes that you use should be affected by this. So it's not just a marketing exercise, it's a business exercise. So again, scan the QR code. If you want to see how applying these techniques will actually impact your business, all well and good me just talking about the success that I've had with other people, how will it actually impact on you? Scan the QR code. It's a very, very quick and easy series of questions to answer. You don't need to be hunting in your filing cabinets, pulling out spreadsheets. It's all information you'll have in your head. And then within 24 hours, I will get you a bespoke individual report back. And if it's interesting and you think it's something that you want to explore further, we can have a chat. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit like, get the algorithm all excited. If you don't want to miss the recording of the next one, hit subscribe. I also broadcast other stuff on the channel, so you'll get a notification when that comes up. Or even better, in the description, if you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a link to register for the next live session, which takes place on the first Thursday of every month. So if you click the link, only need your name and your email address, and then you'll get a notification of the next one. So I'll leave that with you. Bye.